The story begins with a girl finishing her favorite manga series and thinking this is the perfect time to end her life. But before she prepares to enter the isekai world, she gets approached by a guy telling her that whatever she is planning to do is dangerous. She threatens him with a knife, warning him to stay away since if he comes closer, he will contract an incurable disease and die. She plans to end herself due to this deadly effect. While she conveys all this, the man walks forward towards the knife. The girl gets freaked out, and we see the man grabbing her, throwing her to the other side of the bridge. Despite being stabbed, he looks lively and fine, asking her about the nature of the disease and where it's going to hurt. Suddenly, a part of the bridge collapses, and the guy falls onto a train, splatting against the windshield. The girl starts crying, blaming herself for dragging another person to their death. Surprisingly, the dude's head rolls up to her, and he's still alive. He explains that he understands what she meant by a deadly disease as he regenerates his body completely. However, he doesn't regenerate with clothes, which makes the girl freak out. She punches him in the guts and runs away, thinking he's a zombie. But he stops her, insisting he's not a zombie but rather undead. He wants to ask her some questions about her claim of being unlucky. Hearing people approaching, he uses his blood-like abilities to fly out of there. They reach the top of a building, where he explains how he regenerates his legs at high speed and uses the momentum to fly. She isn't paying much attention and tries to escape. However, the man didn't bring her up there just to let her go. He wants answers and starts rolling her to the edge of the building, making her scared. Eventually, she agrees to answer his questions. Afterwards, her explanation starts 10 years ago when she was only 8 years old. Her parents were going on a business trip for a week. She hugged and kissed her parents before leaving and explains that after half an hour their plane exploded, resulting in 270 people dead, including her parents. Since then, she realized that whoever touched her ended up getting hurt, and she kept covering her skin. Suddenly, the man grabs her at her melons, realizing that the biggest strokes of unluck happen when she gets hugged. She freaks out and tells him to let go. At that moment, a big stroke of bananas from a plane smashes at him. The girl uses the moment to escape, and we see the man quickly regenerating, unsatisfied with the results. As she is running, she ends up slipping on a banana peel and falls off the building with the regret of never experiencing anything girly like love or fashion. Her manga book slips from her jacket, and she tries to catch it, but it flies away. Accepting the fact that she is dying as she approaches the floor, the immortal man immediately catches her and starts stopping the fall with his strange ability. He tells Azuma that there's no way he is letting her die because he believes he finally found the power that will give him a real death, and tells her that he will find the rule she tried to hide from him and make an even bigger stroke of unluck so he can finally snuff out his ridiculously long life. He then uses his blood power to get out of there and declares that it's time to go back to his hideout and figure out her unluck ability. In the distance, some men are watching them, and a black-suited guy explains to someone that Undead is heading to his hideout with the new breed and is planning on capturing her after figuring out her ability. At his hideout, he mentions to her that he realizes the fact that as long as he keeps touching her, the bigger the unluck, and tells her to take off her clothes to test it. Immediately, she starts running away from him, telling him that she will never do it. Then, and we see the undead following her, telling her to do it, but as she runs, her hat gets stuck, making her hair stick out. The man makes a joke about her hair, but she breaks down and starts crying, mentioning that no one is able to cut them because of her unluck. The undead problem solver brings out some scissors and starts cutting her hair, pointing out that as long as he is touching her, no unluck will come his way. And after finishing her cut, he shows her what she looks like, and she is happy that she looks great and thanks him for his work. As he is excited about what kind of unluck is going to be, suddenly his head gets sliced off. We then see some masked men and their leader thanking her for letting the undead lower his guard. She asks them who they are, and before answering, he mentions that he needs to place Undead into a special capsule first so he can't regenerate. They start handcuffing her, and she mentions that she thought they were on her side. They start laughing and tell her how naive she is. He mentions that their job is to police any unselected negators that can throw the world into chaos. She doesn't have any idea what he is talking about, and we see him grabbing her head, mentioning that her ability to kill people by touching is perfectly suited for murder, but touching her with clothes makes you completely safe. She asks what he plans to do with her power, and he mentions that there is no use of it besides killing, claiming that even Undead captured her for that reason. She refuses, telling him that he only used her power to himself so he could die, and claims that he is not a useless, disgusting person like them, He gets pissed and grabs her by her cheeks, claiming he wouldn't mind killing her right now. Azuma starts crying, apologizing to Undead and telling him that she is so grateful he cut her hair. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning strikes the man who was holding him, making him fall down. The man wonders if it must be a stroke of his unluck, but Azuma doesn't think so. And then we see Undead has returned. While keeping a hold of Azuma, he tells his man to fight him at once. Besides, he is Undead. He is just an amateur in combat. Undead gets insulted by this, and he explains that he may be an amateur now, but his past was a completely different story. He doesn't have enough space in his brain, so he puts a cork on his brain to keep 100 years worth of memories bottled up. He immediately starts fighting his man, and in no time, the battle is over. The Undead mentions that he realized that her unluck wasn't the sliced head, but it was actually the lightning bolt, and as the Undead approaches to get Azuma from him, the man lifts his sword to her throat and threatens him to hand over his head without regenerating to him, and if he doesn't do so, he will kill her. Undead is disappointed by him, hoping they will have a fight together. Undead starts cutting his head and starts shocking Azuma. She starts a dramatic speech, telling him that she doesn't want people around her to get hurt, but the Undead isn't listening. He already chopped his head off. He tells her that he doesn't give a fuck about her opinions and mentions he had fun today, and if they see again, they will team up again in the future. He then throws his head off, and Azuma thinks of a way to trigger the biggest stroke of unluck. She pushes the man and rushes to Undead and gives him a kiss before ending up in the man's arms. He asks her what she did, and she explains that her unluck is coming. Undead realizes what she plans to do and tells her to leave from there. As they are fighting, a giant meteorite flies at them, destroying the whole building. Then we see Azuma worried if Undead is okay, and at the distance, we see the Undead approaching and humorously mentioning that this was his first time taking a meteorite in his face. She's glad he is okay and alive. The two introduce themselves, but the Undead doesn't have a name, so she names him Andy because he is Undead. He couldn't care less and mentions that since a kiss caused all this, the next time they will have sex. After hearing this, Azuma immediately runs from there. Sometime later, Azuma reflects on how her unluck gets people killed, and she thought she didn't deserve to live, but she met Undead, and he found her amusing. She thought being with him would help her feel like she could live longer, or so she thought. He points out that since a kiss did all that damage, maybe doing something more will be an even bigger stroke of unluck. She gets annoyed, thinking he only wants to use her as a tool, so Azuma comes up with an idea, claiming the key is likability. Andy doesn't have any idea what she is talking about. She tells him that aside from her mom and dad, she also kissed her granddad who had dentures that scared her, and after her kiss, he only got sprained legs and ended up dying 3 years later, and she doesn't think it was her fault. Azuma concludes that the more she likes a person, the bigger the unluck, and she tells him that if he tries to do something, she will end up hating him forever and lose his shot at a proper death. He understands her and mentions that he can't let her die until it happens. Azuma asks about what he means, but he is already on the move. Later, we see he has brought her into an armored place. Andy mentions that he set up places like this over the globe so he can use them with the guys whenever he wants to, and he mentions to her to get ready. After some time, we see Azuma with full armor, and she asks what she needs it for. He mentions that she needs it for protection from the guys like yesterday, and mentions that even more are coming for them. Azuma thinks they must be too freaked out to come since of that they did yesterday. Andy explains that they are too strong and says that they are the guys who negate the rules of this world, and they are called negators. He explains that they got a front row seat to their abilities from the fight yesterday, and the fact they don't know their powers, they don't stand a chance against them, and all they can do is run. Andy explains that the negators caught him 50 years ago, and spent 10 years in a lab doing all sorts of experiments on him. Azuma asks how old he actually is, but he explains that if they caught her, there's no telling how many people will die just to confirm her ability, and even cut her fingers off to see if they work when detached. Azuma freaks out hearing this, and tells him to get out of there right away. They get on a motorbike and start the road with Azuma being scared. While they are moving, Azuma asks Andy where they are going, but he explains that they will just keep on running. Azuma worries that it's a matter of time before they get caught and is scared to be captured by them. Andy calms her down, telling her that he will not let her die, and mentions that he will make her fall for him and give him the biggest stroke of unluck she has. She gets embarrassed by him saying this. Suddenly, the sky cracks like an iPhone screen, and Andy recognizes they are the Union. A giant robot deals them serious damage, and Azuma tries to run towards Andy, but she gets pulled by a guy telling her clearly she likes Andy. She realizes he is an enemy and panics that she can't move. The robot tells him to kill her since their orders are to kill her and capture Undead, but the man wants to chat with her for a little and starts asking her some flirtatious questions. Andy gets back up, using his sword at the robot, but suddenly the robot uses an attack against him, making him unable to move. Azuma thinks that this is the man doing, but he claims he's not doing it. The giant robot gives him a big punch, making him fly. As the robot keeps approaching him, Azuma screams at Andy, saying the guy paralyzing her and him is the blue-headed guy. Andy sees that her arms are moving and tells her that they ain't related and explains that they are restrainer-type negators and shows that their ranges and abilities don't even seem similar. He explains that the robot has his body and the other one has her will. The guy is impressed by him and guesses he hasn't lived all this time for nothing. Void strikes him, and he swiftly counters, realizing he can move immediately after the hit. They engage in a series of blows, as Sumo wonders whether the organization will relentlessly pursue them. Shen discloses that they've garnered high-priority status due to the meteor incident, attracting numerous negators to pursue them. Isumo discovers that Shen and Void are also negators, prompting her to question why they are not being hunted. Shen clarifies that the Union, a group of 10 exempted negators performing missions, protects them. Contemplating joining the Union, Isumo is cautioned by Void that all seats are occupied. About to attack her, Void's move is intercepted by Andy, who suggests the idea of joining the Union. Proposing the elimination of 2 negators to secure spots, Andy assures Isumo he will keep her safe. She touches him and hastily retreats, warning him of imminent massive bad luck. However, it's not a declaration of love, but an expression of gratitude for everything he's done. A truck approaches and collides with Andy, resulting in an explosion, but Shen and Void manage to escape unharmed. Andy continues to be pursued by them. As he soars through the air, he ponders his recent actions, realizing the robot's power is truly unavoidable. Curious about the other adversary's abilities, especially since it restrained Azuma without apparent movements, he decides to maintain a low profile until he unravels his power. The ticking of dynamite signals an impending explosion, causing the entire building to collapse. Azuma rushes to Andy, wondering if her powers triggered this catastrophe. From the wreckage emerges the robot, proclaiming the need to neutralize Azuma, but before he needs to deal with Undead. As he thinks he is grabbing his hand, Andy intervenes swiftly. He notes that his left body parts require 30 seconds to disappear and exploits his system, using his parts bullet ability to dismantle. Shen strides forward, calling out to Void, only to be met with the surprising sight of Void's defeat. Andy asserts that it's his turn now, aiming to secure a spot not only for Azuma but for himself as well. He rushes at the man, but his leg attacks and his punches get completely blocked by him. He wonders what his ability is. Azuma gives him his sword, and as he prepares to cut him down, he suddenly stops moving. Shen tells him that he hesitated for a moment. Shen questions whether Andy harbors a soft spot for Azuma, who attempts to touch him but misses. Refusing to unveil his power, Shen asserts that they won't escape or touch him, as his ability manipulates their minds. He asks them who will be the one who will keep the spot, and Andy mentions that he will leave the spot to Azuma and tells her not to worry since he will be able to survive and make her fall in love with him before she dies. As Shen prepares to take her away, she tells him to look away and starts on removing her clothes, telling that she will make love with Andy and repay him since he helped her from the start and she didn't do anything for him. Shen starts laughing and claims that he doesn't want them to split up, so he suggests to kill another of their members. He reveals that a Union member is going to be in Lake in Russia with a red necktie and emblem, and he wishes them to succeed. He alerts them that there will be people hunting them along the way as he is leaving. Azuma is surprised that they have been spared, and Andy helps her get dressed, telling her that he doesn't want her when she is desperate. He tells her about his plan, revealing he has a boat to help them get to Russia, and then use the plane to get to Irkutsk, where he will hire some of his friends to help them kill the target at the lake, so they can finally secure a spot in the Union, say they can finally live in peace.